First question. What is the best... Speaking to that. What is the best use of AI? Complete a lot of heavy lifting on a task, question the person, then tidies up the errors and generalities.
It's just an open question: is what is the best use of AI? Is it do you get the technology to do some heavy lifting as a person, then you tidy it up and take away the generalities, or what is the best idea, the best use of AI? So it's just a general question.
I think the best use of AI is connected with language. It's what we I think agree that the best development is with the language, natural language. Because it's statistically, I think it's the easiest to create, but it's not like we shouldn't use it. We need to observe and understand what is current obstacle, but we do not claim AI for something which is not implemented yet. And I think what I wanted to share, it was we need to use AI, but we cannot say, okay, it's not, as I said, a Swiss knife army solution. And even if we use AI, it will be different colors with numbers, as you mentioned, as well as if implementation is, in each company, implementation could be different. Because your size, your current tools, you shouldn't say, okay, AI, I need to make revolution. No, which parts of AI will bring to the table the highest value? And I think it's my answer.
Yeah, we're experimenting with it in our organisation. There's two that come to mind. I could probably so one of them is generative, so I'm using it to formulate bid responses, and that still needs a level of human interaction. But I found in my experience of using it is quite good for stimulating and brainstorming. I still feel like it needs that human. I think it will get there, but I think at the moment it still needs that human level of knowing where it's sourcing data from, reflecting on is it accurate or not, can I trust what it's telling me, those sorts of things. If you can tick on all those, then yeah, I think that there's a lot of power to it. The other one where I know we are experimenting is with the Microsoft Fabric and the Copilot type stuff, and querying our own data sets and asking it to visualize dashboards and all that sort of stuff, and varying degrees of success at the moment. But again, it's only going to get better with time. So I think it's more a question of inevitability. And myself and Mo, we've had this conversation, more a conceptual and philosophical question around implementing AI and at what level in an organisational structure or an application. You know, for example, should Motor have an AI built into it, or should they be servicing data to an organisation that enables them to use the AI on that data? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. You know, but it's an interesting question to ask, and you know, I think no matter what way we cut it, you know, it is coming and it's here to stay. And like I say, going back to that innovation diffusion theory, I can guarantee I can go in any senior leadership board meeting and I'll talk about ChatGPT. Everyone's heard of it. Everyone knows what it does. That's how quickly innovation can spread if it means something to people. And I think AI has really, you know, caught wind with a lot of people.
Thank you. Well, yeah. So the answer is, I'm pretty much with the other guys. It depends. It depends on where you want to deploy it, what the task is. Again, if it's more regular, there's a lot of commonality between tasks, like from starting to just chatting people or clients or customers or whoever and giving support. Well, it's obviously it's a good tool. Also, yeah, checking general templates and flagging issues if it's trained on, and we're talking about the language models. It's again useful. Copilot and helping engineers. It does speed up the work, but it does make mistakes as well. So the human is still required. Yeah. So it's kind of a hand-in-hand work process. So AI, or this media version of AI, because AI is a really broad term. It involves so much. But I guess that thanks to media in people's mind, it's the generative one through ChatGPT and the OpenAI and all these really media hyped version and then kind of subset, and it's just a small part of AI. Well, these models are they will improve, certainly. That's not a question. So it will only get better. But to deploy them completely on their own and to hope that it just, you can fire all workforce and no need for engineers from here on, we're not quite there yet. And if we get there ever, that's a very good question. Probably nobody knows, but not today. But it's you should deploy it, try to, it's working, it's useful, and it can deliver value. But then you have to do your own kind of cost analysis, like what does it mean if you deploy it? How difficult is it to integrate? How many times it fails? What support it needs? How much does it cost to operate it? Because it will cost. Whether it's a local model and you can deploy it locally, or you need to use one of these giant general models, which run in massive data centers, and then you will get the bill. So it depends.
Thank you. Cheers. So the next question is from Ian. I will answer that. Do you want to read it out, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, Building Safety Act, it came in quite quietly for a lot of people, and then suddenly we've got this, oh my word, we've got to do something about it. I'm finding it quite difficult to find specifics in the Building Safety Act, standards, actual documentation that says this is what information you will require to be delivered to the person running this. So the current question is, it's a big thing. What's the impact, firstly, in your world? Then what I want to know is, can we use the artificial intelligence world to actually interpret the standards, the things that you're looking at, to try and find out, are we complying with that, and be able to, what would I like to see here? I'd like to see some way of signing off this certification, not with a human being sitting there going through miles and piles of paperwork, ticking off boxes. I want to be able to see a machine to go through and go, yes, they're complying. They will be safe according to the Building Safety Act. So, sorry, long-winded question, but I think it's quite an important one at the moment.
I was having this discussion, it might have been today or yesterday, I did a panel yesterday, and if you really distill down the Building Safety Act and get away from the specifics of, this person needs to sign off this at this stage, and these plans should be submitted, and you should have a fire strategy at this stage, and they should have all the competencies and all that sort of stuff. To really simplify it to its purest form, what one of the core sentiments behind it is, I need to have a predefined set of information provided by competent people at specific times in the project, and I need to be able to access that information whenever I want it, and I know exactly where it is. And if I don't have access to it, I know where to go to look for it. That's really what's at the core of most of it. And they haven't quite... I remember reading some of the risk assessments about the impact of when it was the Building Safety Bill rather than the Act, and they were inferring that, if we're all doing level 2 BIM, then we're sort of 70% there and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. But if you take that as a concept, and not just the Common Data Environment ISO 9650 stuff, but if you apply that level of rigor of information of management and data to your site forms, to your certificates, to your competency checks, to your drawings, to your models, to your specifications, if everything follows a consistent structure in a consistent repository, the rest of the stuff should follow in my book. And then I think that is also quite a neat segue into the AI. If you've got that consistency of every time I have a a sign off from the regulator, the digital fingerprint for it is here. You know exactly where to look for it every single time, and that's where the automation can get driven. I don't necessarily see it being as necessarily even an AI thing. I think if you've got those predefined slots of where information should be held and who should be providing it, that is almost just a Power BI exercise at that point, in my opinion. So without getting into the specifics of who should do, I was talking about that more conceptually, but I think that is fairly solid as a concept of, provided that all the information in relation to what that process requires is structured, that's really what's at the core of it.
One of the ones I'm finding here is that it's that predefined information.
Yeah.
At the moment, information requirements from clients, absolutely rubbish.
Yeah.
They really are terrible. They're not defining exactly what they want. So how, in this context here, how are we defining the specific information that's required to prove that that building is safe? And then the Building Safety Act says we've got to measure and monitor that information all the way through to make sure we know who made the decision, when made this problem. But what is that information in the first place?
Yeah, and
it's not defined. How do we do it?
yeah, we've got a working group internally, and we've had some consultancies on it, and I'm aware more at the government legislative level it's not quite there yet, but we've got a list of, I think it's knocking on 300 deliverables that we've identified that should be relevant to that golden thread. So I'm happy to connect afterwards and have a chat through it. Yeah, but it's quite a thorough document. But again, because I try and simplify things as much as possible, that's the world I live in, really, is just trying to make something complicated sound simple. All I say is I've got 300 different sources of information. How do I automatically validate they're there? Yes. Yeah.
I think it's related to the internal data governance. In my case, when I work in corporation in different markets, it's really difficult to say that we have one shape for safety regulation. And that you can simplify something if you have consistent internal data governance. That you get the data which you believe that it's 90% something which should be used. Locally, you need to add this 10%. But second, if we really need AI to that, a lot of these processes required simulation that we have from the BIM world. Additional is how we will interpret the regulation. In the case which you showed the language in images, this interpretation is weak from AI. It can go better, but if we need to use sometimes the high technology to make the first judgment, it's open question from my side, but look, in the Greeks' time, they were able to calculate something, or they were able to build pyramids because they just quickly judge, okay, we have 2 or 3 options. With AI, we can get, in some aspects, very valuable, quick understanding of a large data model. But sometimes it's still the question, we have only 3 solutions, but it's the best to use AI for that or not. With politicians, I think it will be organization which will say which documents are mandatory. But if it will be even within UK, it will be the same. I'm afraid that each local authority will have some small deviation, which indeed will require the markup on the side of the page. Okay, in that location, we need to make it slightly different. But I strongly believe the data governance is the first step. Second, the understanding which kind of data transformation is the best. Can we create the digital model, send to local authority and say, we don't want to make drawings? In Canada, it's in some cases possible, but I don't know too many countries where it's possible. But you still will make a filtering of the data in case, okay, I'll prepare the paper. And the verbiage will be very easy to create with this AI because this definition is really high at the moment. But interpretation, I'm afraid it could make a lot of issues. And with the safety regulation, issues which you find at the last stage on the site will cost the most.
May I ask a question back regarding the original question? Is rather the challenge in understanding and kind of mapping out the mess in the regulation and the various kind of sub versions and interpretation at local level, and you try to map this and model it somehow, because if this is the case, then no one really has the rules and the models, so you can't put it to an AI, because what do you put in there unless there's sufficient mess that the AI can try to pick up on its own? But well, that has to be a huge mess, and loads of data. Is this rather the challenge, or kind of checking and enforcing the regulation on something that's out there?
The initial challenge to me is what that information is, because nobody really knows yet. And we're saying, you've got to have it, you've got to follow it all the way through, you've got to make sure that but what is it? And I think you're right there in the fact that the challenge is we've got to define what it is, because I want to be able to, at the end, automatically check that, but we haven't written the standard. We've written the Building Safety Act, we haven't written the standard of what the information is. And I might be corrected here, potentially, Ben, that process of how things are checked out, how things are approved, and I know they're pointing you towards 1192, 9650, but there's no actual, I can't see a definitive checking and balance sheet that says it's got to go through these particular things to get to the end. Massively woolly. I think we've got to fix that bit so we can get to that point. But we have got standards which are really good. Could we potentially use the AI world to go back to the information and go, well, yes, all these have gone through this process, it's gone through the correct standard, and we've delivered the right thing again.
So if there's historical data out there of various examples, shapes and sizes and forms, and even if it's messy, I think AI and other tools and systems, but let's go with AI. I think you could model it, and then through that model, then you can have a better understanding what it is in reality. Because if you don't know, then first you need to map it out and model it, and then you will see what it is, and you might get surprised that it's something. The problems and the challenges are elsewhere than you thought they would be, because it's complex. For our minds, it's complex. Yeah, it's too much. But yeah, I think one could model it. Yeah.
There are some people who do something similar at Sellafield, where there's a problem that someone introduces legislation against all the other policy documents, and so you end up with these massively complicated relationships to avoid having conflicts where one document that you have to comply with is disagreeing with another, or when come the application, imagine everyone has to be 1 meter further away from something. There's some areas that can't comply with that. So it's not just AI. There's graph relationships.
It's more than that. Yeah, it's not just AI, but graphs are not that different from AI. I mean, we're talking about networks. So
That is, just what you just said there, massive light bulbs just come on. Problem we have in government at the moment is there's lots of policies, and they contradict each other. One policy out by the Department of Transport, one by the Department of Education, one by the Department of Environment, and they contradict each other because they'll give you a grant to do this, and you a grant to do something completely different, and those two things are contradicting each other. And so what we're doing is actually spending twice the money to get absolutely nowhere, whereas we should be spending once the money to get twice as far as we are at the moment. And I love that thought, to be able to look through policy and see where those conflicts.
We need to ingest policy.
It's a very, very difficult challenge. So one of the other examples we had was someone, I think it was from Harvard, they got a 2 and 2. So one is that ChatGPT basically became an insider trader. If given some insight, it would trade and then would lie about it. So then they expose, so that's problematic. And then from a legal perspective, they fed 600. It's a very large, not just the legal case, but all the other information and precedent. And more often than not, it would then give a layman bad advice because you didn't necessarily know, because the strength and relationships weren't contained in the data for it to then adequately spit back an answer.
Gotcha.
It can be, I mean, there's a lot of money going into this. People are doing it, but again, there's caveats.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I think the easiest will be if government will define, for example, 30 documents, forms which need to be filled with clearly defined units of measure and so on. Then we can say about the data and we can filtering, but it will be very future time because we do not have historical data. It must be filled by the data from now.
Hansard have put a lot of time into this with I think the Turing Institute doing stuff where someone proposes a piece of legislation that actually doesn't exist and is buried in some other act.
I think that inference on the risk assessment, and it was the bill of if you're doing level 2 bin, you're there or thereabouts. I just don't think that was thinking about it holistically enough, because there's a lot of information on projects that standard doesn't touch yet. Not saying that it shouldn't, but ISO 9650 I think could be more holistically applied to projects.
Perfect. Okay. Next question. I sort of kind of think this leads on a little bit. It's to do with is there governance on the data that AI uses? So I'm going to say that was me that's put that question. From a sort of design background, I'm not too sure about this, but obviously we have, stat laws, we have legislation in place which is all written out. Who's actually governing the data that's used by AI to give us information that's actually accurate, rather than, say, potentially fueling us with fake news and, creating something it's collected off the internet or it's gathered incorrectly, let's say. Is there something out there, or is it at the moment, is it quite open source in a sense?
I just recently participated in some discussion related to IP protection in the US because it's a really hot topic. Which data you can use to train your large language model? And 3 main companies were prosecuted that they use the New York Times data to create the concept how to write articles. When you go to other, I just make philosophical answer to that. You need to have the proper data to get the proper answer. And if we look for the social media, what is at the top? The proper answer or the most popular? If we look for the politician, what is the most important? When we get more voices for us in election or against? And from the statistical model, you will find that easier is to grab the wrong data because they are all around. If you want to have trustful data, you need to go to library. And now, if AI will provide us something more valuable when we have in the books, I don't think. It's just, you need to have, even organization level, you need to have time to study something. Like you described your path for dialogues. It's a long curve to find pros and cons. It's plenty of other software developers we can say, okay, it's useful, but you need to find your own ratio of the cost versus possibilities. And it will be different for the small, large. It's like I showed with cars. The best will be time machine that we know, okay, we make a mistake 3 months ago, just change and make everything again. And I think it's in the future, I will be able to correct some actions just from the predictive model, that they will find, okay, something is going, like in chess. Yeah? You can predict couple of moves up front. But at certain level, it's fine. Okay, it's no way to predict because you lose too much memory or too much action. When we get data from the AI, I think it's really important that you're expert. If you have advisory role, you need to know if it's something which is really probable or is just a guess. I get a few questions to ChatGPT when it was just very early stage open. I say, if beam is positive, and he replied, yeah, beam is positive because it's doing, as I said, is beam negative? Yes, beam is negative. Yeah, but if you are, I think everyone can make a test. If you're familiar with some discipline, specific knowledge, which is not just average, and you ask, you will find, okay, if it's give me the proper answer or not. It will be better and better because it's just removing. But also we can go to the situation which I showed with this transit of Mercury, that you can remove something which is really important. Because from statistical point of view, it's useless. I don't know if you want to add.
Sure. It depends on what it's trained on. For example, well, talking about the web and social media, so these models will get as racist as we are, who talk about these topics. And unfortunately, we can see these biases then coming back from these models. So if we put in, well, in a short sentence, yeah, if you put in garbage, then garbage will come out. So garbage in, garbage out. And if we bring in the bias, then these models will work with the bias because for them that's the knowledge base. And it's true for everything. It's true for social media things. It's true for language. It's true for image generation. We saw these examples a while ago, I think, when actually the current political bias got reflected in image generation with different skin colors, and because these are trends and these are overly represented in the knowledge base currently the AI is trained on, then the other things. So the result is that these things dominate. Yeah. And well, yeah, the same can happen to anything. So I would twist the question rather that how do we regulate the training data that goes into the AI? Because if that's not clean, then, well, we have a problem. And the internet is certainly not something we can regulate, I guess, because that can be anything. Yeah, it changes all the time. And I guess that's a question of freedom of speech. So probably that's good. So that's fine. But maybe that's not the right tool then for engineering purposes and building safety. Because then what if the bias is there? Because why not? People, well, during the pandemic, we saw all these vaccine arguments, pro and con, and then like, okay, but then, well, do we trust to train a medical, a kind of a healthcare AI advisory platform based on the internet's opinion on these, or do we rely on the academics and the doctors, or which one is it? Yeah, so that's what I would add. Thank you.
I would just one more thing which came to my mind. It's a little like you have specialists. I use quite often this phrase that in 40s, 50s, the engineers, specialists who started a lot of things has experience in all these subjects like maths, physics, and they started to be IT. And when they create all the schema, how the data is going, they have this really technical knowledge. I'm just referring to the technical and construction. And they were able to define something which is really in their understanding area. Now we have more and more IT people who are clever, who are the best in class, but the knowledge of technical knowledge is very limited. And if we go to the space where are more and more IT, we need to develop very, very sensitive rules which reject the wrong information. And I think it will be AI to AI. That AI will simulate something, but second AI, which needs to find what is potentially true, what is wrong. And especially what is very good in your presentation, the fast and slow thinking. It's a really good book about this, written by one of Americans' statistics. With machine learning, we also make this potential gap that we want to have fast answer, not the correct answer. We are not patient. And if we believe, just think, we say we can make construction faster. We change the physics that the heavy load, when we race in the high speed, we can stop in a second. No, it still will be the same force to stop it.
I don't think I've got anything more to add on that one.
Thank you. Right, let's get on to the next question. So, Sandy, would you like to read your question, or do you want me to read it out?
So a lot of companies are actually starting to. Oh, am I not nodding? Yeah, I know. They're starting to ban ChatGPT because they don't want company-sensitive information loaded into it. But at the same time, they've opened Copilot, and you have to sign in with your company SSO login. So, I mean, we need to integrate AI into our everyday tasks because that's how we're going to get smarter. We all agree on that. But how are we going to do that with all these restrictions? Is it going to remain secure? And as one of your examples was how the ChatGPT learned in the next version about their prime number. So how will it evolve and how will it learn if companies start kind of clamping down on it and restricting you into little bubbles? So I'm not quite too sure of the technical details between Copilot and ChatGPT either. You know, why would they ban the one and keep the other open?
But no, I also asked if the COVID-19 vaccine works, and she said yes.
But what did Copilot say?
Oh, I didn't ask, but either way, yes. Yeah. Depends where it's getting data from.
Yeah, so on the GPT models, I think quite a few of them use sort of open source data sets. So when you ask it a question, it gives you an answer that's out in the universe for perpetuity. With Copilot, my understanding is you can be a lot more selective with the data that it's deriving. So if you've got your own data fabric instance, which is Microsoft's next generation of sort of data analytics, you can be a bit more prescriptive around where it does and doesn't pull data from. So you can apply a bit more governance to it. I think a higher level than that, and this was a discussion that came out yesterday in a panel that was on, we were talking about digitisation to improve sustainability and all that sort of fun stuff. And we quickly pivoted into culture and trust, collaboration, all that sort of stuff, which has just been a recurring theme in this industry for 30 plus years, if not more. And I think the deeper question is, how do you create an environment in which transparency and openness and willingness to share information and data is accepted? I think if you get that right, the rest of it kind of follows. So that would be my sort of more aspirational take on it without getting into the technical weeds. And we're starting to see it now with like the alliancing sort of contracts that we get involved with. Integrated project delivery has been around for a while. Those more sort of target value design based approaches rather than race to the bottom type approach, which is not sustainable for the industry. And I think that's encouraging the right behaviours. And I think if we continue to do more of that, I think that because really what's driving that is we don't want other people knowing about how we're performing. That's ultimately what's at the core of it. Yeah, we don't want someone else seeing data about what this package cost or how long this took or how many accidents we had on this site and that all on and on and on. That's really what's at the core of it. And really that is, you know, your competitive edge, openness, all that sort of stuff, which is why we have a natural disposition to lock down and say, nah, not sharing. But exactly, yeah, because they don't know where that data's going, and there's somewhere they have a degree of confidence where, no, we know that's secure within our sphere of comfort. Say again, sorry. Exactly, well, the whole Huawei, TikTok, all that sort of stuff, it's all at the same root cause. It's the same exactly. It goes up and up. But yeah, that's more my sort of cultural take on it rather than the technical nuance of it.
When I started to use ChatGPT first, for me it was interesting that the knowledge is described, I think 2 years ago we stopped this database. With Copilot I think it's a little more fresh, but it's still not live answer what is going in the market. When you think about the knowledge management, which is quite popular in many companies, what is the most valuable? Answers or questions? Questions are the most valuable. But when you look for the AI, who is the winner? The company which provides you AI because it gets your opinion, or you because you get some answers. And this opinion, it could be similar what we have with an advertisement on web page. I was typing, I want to buy shoes, and next day on each page I have plenty of shoes. But if you will ask, just if it will be very marketing model for the AI, I want to solve something, and then you will have one solution, and you will start to trust, oh, it's the only solution in the market. You will not look for the competitor. How to protect AI that it will be not primary solution proposed by AI versus the best really, we can say, in honest, holistic view on the market. And for each company, it's a leaking of data. When you go to the ChatGPT or Copilot, the question is, okay, you are smart, someone is smart, they will ask without putting confidential data, but the rest will take entire contract, paste, and we say, okay, what do you think, is contract correct or not? And just from the statistical point of view, this data has incredible value. Also, you cannot trust that AI is fully cyber secure. If your data will be shared with that behind your firewall, who will get this data as well? Potentially the AI providers also will selling anonymized data. But if they do not anonymize it properly, because it's just think, what is the greatest marketing value if someone will get all the questions which we put to the AI?
Thank you. Yeah, so continuing on this right there, yeah, you could do your own kind of actions that if you anonymize part of the queries, the prompts, then it may not be a problem anymore. So you can build and design your infrastructure to, because the problem is there. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's a problem. It depending on which AI model we are talking about, because some AI models you can run locally and then you don't share with anyone. If you're talking about integrating ChatGPT into the everyday workflow, then the problem is there. So we don't know what happens at OpenAI, what do they do with the data, what happens to it, whether it gets recycled. I would say some of it maybe. It looks like it, but also some of it's difficult to tell. Yeah, I don't want to claim anything here. Because a lot of data then gets back to the internet, which is almost public domain. We can say that regardless copyright, whatnot, but current AI models, they don't care about copyright because they scrape whatever they can. They're running out of data all the time. So they are relentless, yeah? Reckless rather. So yeah, it depends. If you need to train or so you have some more niche scenario where you end up building your own kind of AI model for that specific, so you're not going to face this problem because you control it. Or those IT professionals, whoever you work with and make this happen, they will make sure that it's fine. If it's ChatGPT, then well, you can try to work your way around it. That's probably the best one can do. Unless some governments and they come together and make new regulations to try to, but what they couldn't regulate former issues either. Like there's still social media all about this. It's really difficult to regulate. So I don't know if it can be regulated at all. Maybe to some extent they might try, but like probably it is what it is. Yeah. Yeah, they always do. Yeah, they like that. They regulate bananas and yeah, sure. But
I think
I'm not sure it makes sense.
We can only grow the awareness. It's the only solution.
Yeah, that's probably that's the right answer there. So if you're aware that my info might get out, I had the same question, a similar one for a legal company trying to integrate AI, and I asked them like, okay, but if we go with these large models, then what about the data? What about the client's data? What if there's a court case? What if those claims belong to a stock market listed company? Okay, then also, gentlemen said here that like, okay, these models are not necessarily up to date because training is a massive exercise, and normally the knowledge base is behind by a year or two. So does it matter? But probably the only person who can answer is you. Like, is it a problem for us or it isn't? If it is, then try to work your way around it. If it's not really a problem, just don't worry about it. Yeah.
The latest generation of laptops have a new processor which lets you do some AI on the machine. And one of the features is it can record everything you're doing, use computer vision, and it goes, oh, you always book your train on this time, so I can automate that for you. And so the steps are towards a personalised AI. Now the counter to that is, imagine you found yourself in court. Could your personal AI be subpoenaed and pose questions against you? In certain legislations, that would be fine. They have rights to access your computer.
That should move us back.
I mean, as an employee, I don't care. I just want to get my job done the fastest and best I can get it done. So unless IT block it, I'm going to use it.
But you're still responsible for what you say. So if you got that from ChatGPT.
Exactly. I'm the specialist. I can interpret.
Actually, yeah.
But I don't think about the data I'm putting into ChatGPT to get that answer back. And it's the data you put into that, is actually, where is that going?
Just quickly, it takes 15 minutes to set up a local version of ChatGPT, which
Yeah.
is as equivalently good as, what's interesting is everyone talks about
Run it
ChatGPT.
locally. Yeah.
Locally, you can set up, if you have a semi-powerful laptop, 15 minutes and you've got ChatGPT for free with no leaking of data in front of you.
Is that Llama?
Well, it's Llama
Llama
is the path to which to
Not
use
many.
Mistral, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You can then choose the model that's probably fit. But setting up Llama on your laptop, 15 minutes, 7 billion parameters, semi-powerful laptop. You can do it yourself, no leaking.
Does that cost anything?
No. Well, apart from the energy on your laptop.
But to actually have that long
No,
whatever it is, it's free.
It's open source. But everyone always talks about ChatGPT, but open source is doing arguably sometimes better than OpenAI. So it's just for any company that's serious about that, just get Llama on your laptops.
Yeah, you don't train the model, you just run it. Yeah,
You can-
download it and run it locally. That means that it doesn't interfere with anything outside or back at OpenAI or whatever. Just run it locally and integrate like that, maybe.
The stuff you don't want to retrain, you don't want to have to constantly retrain across a broad corpus. What you see a lot of people do is take an existing model and then adapt it or co-opt it into doing a particular domain.
But Llama also makes that very easy if an organisation wanted to.
It's on my list.
It's very, genuinely.
It's also important, I think, from the size of organization. We have a chief information officer in many companies, and the same it should be AI. For example, in Fluor, we have AI steer committee, which is responsible to provide some guidance, as well as Copilot, for example, is a bubble which is only internally used. We do not share the data. But the most important is we really know where we want to go with that, and we train the people, and finally, where we want to use this AI. It must be some from the top management decision in any small, large company, because otherwise we will be not able to manage it. We just will have leaking data.
Yeah, I think we've got about 4 minutes left, so we've got enough time for one question, and this is directed to Dr. Ben.
First time out, I can't say it. Call me Ben.
So you explained some of the benefits of streamlining a number of tools in your tool set, but is there a risk of stifling innovation with this approach?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bit of symmetry about what I'm about to say with the whole System 1, System 2 rationale. Especially in larger organisations. I think smaller organisations can afford to be a lot more agile because it impacts less people. But when you've got sort of 4,500 people, you've got to have a level of governance around what you do, an element of standardisation. And that's the reason why we have, quality management standards and all those sorts of things to ensure consistency. And one of the things that we're batting around as an organisation, we've been around for 127 years, fairly stable organisation. But we recognise that digital technology and innovation is here to stay. And we recognise our organisation needs two operating modes, really. We need that slow System 2 governance of making sure that our due diligence is in place, it's consistent, you can bank on it, it works, it's not broken. And that is, the business as usual operating mode. But you also really need an injection of System 1 that's quick, that's agile, that can try new things, that can try and fail in a controlled environment. And there'll be a lot of failures in that, but there'll also be a lot of good stuff in that as well. And that's something we're actively discussing at the moment, is how do we create that sort of, to use the analogy, that System 1 innovation side of the business that can see new things that have emerged and absorb it and, implement quickly. If anything, that my slides show, even if you find the shiny new thing, to roll that across a population takes time. In a structured way. Obviously, you could say like ChatGPT, right? Everyone go have your fill, but to try and get an element of consistency across 4,500 people, that would just go wild if you just said, yeah, do it. So it's finding that balance, but we also recognise that, like I say, that you need that fast, agile part of it. And as we've seen with the sort of the data-driven organisations and digitally driven companies, that once you're on the innovation curve, it's just exponentially quick. You do one thing and then you suddenly realise, it'd be great if you could do that, or can it do that? Can it do that? So that's sort of my thoughts on it, of having those two operating modes in your business. And we're very good at System 2 and we're trying to be better at System 1 is probably the best way I would put it.
Cheers, Ben.
Oh, sorry.